Come on now he done got y'all attention. Now I bet you tuned in. Now I told you to get ready. You about to get some info and some inspiration. So Stephen, you became debt free, became a millionaire in your 30s, brother. Take us back to the beginning though. Was this something that was always in you? Were you a young prodigy with the calculators and the understanding of interest bearing accounts and like what was your upbringing like and how did it lend to the destination that you're at right now financially?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix of both. So my I can actually remember my mom telling me a story that when I was 7, that I came up to her one day and declared, "Mom, I don't want to play with toys anymore. That's for kids." So I don't remember saying this, but she said I did. Now I would play with the toys when my friends were over, but when they weren't, I'd go off and read or do whatever. But I think there was always something that was really rooted in me, and I can remember clear moments of that. I remember being 8 years old. We're on a family vacation at the motel, not the hotel, the motel. So we're literally outside, like you pull up to your room from outside and go in. Um, and I can remember at 8 years old thinking, "Man, I wonder who owns this place." And how much do they make? And I had enough sense to know that it wasn't the person working in the front desk or the people that would do housekeeping, things like that. So there would be little mini moments like that throughout life that had me thinking that way. uh, but my foundation of coming up, being raised as a kid, was around my parents teaching, hey, live within your means, so don't spend more than what you make. They were savers, and my concept of investing was putting money in like a CD or a bank CD, certificate of deposit. So that piqued my interest of, hey, I can put money somewhere, get paid in an already agreed upon interest rate, um, and have more than what I started with. But that's all I really knew coming up. It wasn't until a lot later that I really discovered and threw myself into true investing.
So let's talk about it. Where did that next level thinking begin for you? Because a lot of people, as they're coming up, maybe they're only thinking about, I got to get the good grades to get to a good college, and I got to get to college. Well, I don't have the money to pay for it, so I'm going to get student loans. And then they start their career with these student loans around their neck and just kind of starting from behind. That's a lot of people's story. Unbeknownst to them, they were a part of a system that was created to kind of hold them back a little bit there, to help them start in a disadvantage. But it was the quote unquote American dream, and it was what was sold to a lot of us, and to no fault of our own. Where did you fall in that? Did you subscribe to a similar narrative, or did you always have an alternate path in your mind to do things differently financially, or was there a learning curve for you too?
It was a little of both. So I would say that where it really clicked for me, I was in college. So coming into school, I knew I wanted to be in a position to graduate from college without any student loans, without any debt. And so between my mentality of going after scholarships and be in positions where my parents did have some funds to help, but the overwhelming majority of my schooling was covered by scholarships and writing essays and doing community service and all these types of things. Like by my senior year, I was getting paid to go to school, which I gotta mention my school, Clemson University, is where I attended, and I studied engineering. So um,
Now, I don't want to move past that. That's huge. That you had the foresight, or you had the people in your life to give you the foresight that as a high school student, you're applying for all these scholarships and you're writing essays, and some people might have heard scholarship and automatically assume sports or something like that. So, talk. How did you start thinking about scholarships? Was it your guidance counselor? Was it your parents? Like, who told you to start doing this? And like, what was that process like? Because there's some parents right now listening who have kids in high school, and they need to know like what went on for you to be able to, as you just said, by the time you're a senior, getting paid to go to college.
Yeah, yeah. So it was so I'm actually the youngest of three. So I have an older brother, older sister that I saw them go through school. So I was able to learn some things from how they navigated through. And as far as scholarships, I was in the top, like, I don't know, 3 or 5% of my class as far as GPA, and had a certain, level of accomplishment that allowed me to get a scholarship. I don't know if it still exists anymore. It was called the Palmetto Fellow Scholarship, which at the time was like $10,000 if you were in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, math, in one of those types of disciplines or degrees. So I had already had a big chunk towards my schooling just from that, from a state perspective. And I'll say this to parents with kids that are getting there. When you think about your dream school, um, I think a big factor to play in it is the affordability of it. So for me, I was actually looking at potentially going to UNC, University North Carolina, Chapel Hill, until I saw that out of state tuition. And then I quickly realized, oh, you know what? Maybe the only reason I wanted to go there was because Michael Jordan played basketball there. so, so I was like, yeah, UNC. It doesn't matter if I got accepted or not. Uh, this is just way more cost than what I believe the return on investment would be to go there. So that helped me even more so narrow down to Clemson, which was an in-state school for me at that time because I came up in South Carolina. So those were some of the dynamics that were going on in making that decision to go there with a plan of walking across that stage, not owing anybody anything once I took that piece of paper in the degree. So hopefully that helps flesh that out a little better.
Absolutely. So what happened next? You got the scholarships, you knocked it out, went got your engineering degree, and here comes adulthood. What happened next?
Right. So one thing I'll take a slight step back and then propel us forward is it was while I was at Clemson that I realized that I could not save my way to wealth. And that was a very important realization for me to come to grips with. Because I was kind of doing the numbers. I'm like, okay, well, if I could save $20,000 a year, how long would it take me to get to 1 million? And I realized it would take me 50 years to get there. And I'm like, this will take me forever. Like, there's got to be a way to compound my efforts to get there sooner because I had this dream, this vision of being wealthy while being relatively young to enjoy it. Um, so that was something that was at play in my mind. So eventually I graduate, I get into the working world, and I won't say the guy's name, but if he's listening to this, he'll know I'm talking about him. But when we graduated together, before we had graduated, he asked me if I'd help him make a budget for him starting his career in engineering. At the time, he was going to work for a company called Michelin. And so we sat down. We knew what his offer letter was, how much he'd make. We tried to figure out roughly how much he'd get after tax. And we made a budget for him that made sense. And for me, after doing that for him, I sat back and I was like, man, I'm going to be making even more than he does or he will. And my nicest piece of furniture currently is a futon. So I don't really have a lot of, high taste for myself of what I have to do or have to have. And I'm like a lot of the people when I would have graduated, it was literally during the Great Recession. So a lot of people, in that 08, 09 time frame didn't have a job lined up. So I'm like, man, I'm really fortunate to have a role that's actually, a healthy paying role too. Um, Let me just live regular, like live relative to just being a young person coming out of school. I don't have to quote unquote get all this stuff because I deserve it, quote unquote. Let me just keep my head down, and see what kind of damage I can do in a decade. And so that was really my mentality. I did do things for fun, like I would do some stuff for enjoyment, um, but I wasn't really moved by what I would see on social media from my peers and friends and so on, because my mentality was I want to put in the work early.
Now, did this start out from day one? Because you said in your answer, let me see how the next decade is going to go. So, was that your goal that in 10 years, I'm going to hit X, Y, and Z number? Like, what were you outlining for yourself as the target? You were willing to make the sacrifices. You said, I'm going to live small, like a person coming out of college. I don't have to get this, that, or the other. So, what was your target in mind for this 10-year journey that you were about to go on?
So my mentality was I wanted to be quote unquote retirable by age 45. That was the only goal that I had for myself. And when I say retirable, what I mean is that I that I wouldn't be as concerned about what I did for a living. Or that money wouldn't be the primary driver for what I would do to generate income. So that's all I kind of knew. And like I said, I made up that word at the time, retirable. Um, I think nowadays people would call it work optional. Um, or just maybe like work flexible. Of I'm like, by 45, I would want to be in a space where if I wanted to be an ice cream truck driver, um, that I could. So that was the level of vision I had around it, um, and went from there. And if you don't mind, can I just speak to the people just directly for a quick second? Okay, so for perfect. So for many of you, you kind of have a feel directionally of where you want to go, but you don't have all the answers and all the steps laid out. My encouragement for you would be, and you can take inspiration off of my own story, is get moving anyway. Get moving anyway. Clarify your vision as you go, but don't wait until you've got it all together to start. And that was the big thing for me as a young person, is I didn't have all of the pieces put together, but I had a general feel for where I wanted to be headed, and I just started moving. And over time I got more clarity, more direction, more wisdom, more discernment, and then even just outside guidance that helped me drive towards the direction I ended up being in.